when you have a very synergistic relationship with marketing leaders and sales leaders, they will defend each other. Unfortunately, I've seen in some companies where, sales have beat up on marketing. Marketing has then got their budget cut. Well, who does that hurt? It hurts sales.
Seriously, have a complicated situation lately, and 10 years ago and today, never seen budget increase.
The natural tendency these days, given the amount of tools, AI especially, is we run the danger of analysis paralysis. Are you willing to reduce the revenue forecast? No.
Whatever metric you're going to report, just always have an alignment and be ready to answer the question like, okay, show me how it influences the profit and loss statement.
Secondly, when is someone going to come back and say, well, got this extra dollars, but you need to justify the spend?
What do you see when you are in the boardroom with CEO? What are they looking for really in those slides, the presentations on dashboards, metrics, and what are the right metrics?
The best marketing budget is really not the biggest one. It's the one that nobody questions.
He's managed the data plumbing and storage infrastructure for the Fortune 100 at tech giants like Hitachi, Western Digital, and EMC. Known in the boardroom as a rare species, he's an executive advisor who seamlessly translates deep engineering complexity into massive corporate revenue. Currently focused on transforming legacy storage into high-velocity AI machinery. Please welcome the architect of the 5 A's framework for budget mastery, Gary Lyng. Gary, how can CMOs re-engineer their relationship with CFOs so that finance don't see marketing as a cost center, but a revenue engine for growth?
It's one of the key attributes you're bringing up, which is alignment across the organization. Marketing is always in this strange position where everyone is a marketer and everyone's got great ideas. And, I can just whip it up in ChatGPT. Why does it need a designer? Why do you need the headcount? So it's a constant re-education and education with stakeholders. Certainly at the end of the day, one of those a budget. Sales have a budget, marketing have a budget, and so forth. But the ultimate purse string holder is the CFO. And, there are large expenses, especially when you start to your major events, like trade shows rather, or you initiate a new branding campaign. So it's very important to build that regular relationship with the CFO. I think Gartner even says, something along the lines of your quarterly meetings with your CFO, you're 2.5 times more likely to be able to protect your budget. And I think this is just one of these constant things to make sure that you've got the people who are going to endorse the programs, endorse the level of spend because they understand the ROI. Or in a lot of cases, they understand what the impact is.
When the budget is cut, the marketing is seeing the low-hanging fruit to reduce cost. What are those reasons and how marketing, not just CMO, but the whole team be more prepared for any surprise situation?
It does come back down to metrics, but it can also, I believe that comes down to the metrics that people care about. At the end of the day, marketing is there not to just create pretty websites and content and do events, but to impact the business and to impact the business growth. And some of those could be directly attributed to marketing, some of them indirectly. So it's a matter of influence customers or rather influence pipeline, as well as the directly correlated pipeline, as well as deals and customer acquisition that marketing did. And one of the key things about building the relationships up with not only the CFO, but the executive team, the CEO and so forth, is people to really understand what is that hard deck. We've seen it in Top Gun and things like this, which go below the hard deck, which is, again, a fictitious level ground. As soon as you go below a certain spend amount in a particular vehicle, it's not worth doing anymore. So if you're not going to invest enough dollars in, for example, display advertising, GEO or SEO investments, maybe you're not doing a certain amount of months. So as you go down a particular threshold, don't bother. because it's wasted dollars. The ROI, the return is just not going to be there.
Yeah, pretty much. So attribution is the end here, and how you're measuring the whole programs, right? So that like whenever time comes, or justifies it.
Yeah, I think the original question is why is it the marketing budget is cut? And it comes down to, I think, some of the split, because they tend to, people think, well, they're dollars or, euros or whatever country you're in, that are more flexible to cut. It's very difficult to cut people dollars and investments unless you're killing a particular program or reassigning it. That's always a bit of a challenge. So there's always that split between people dollars and campaign or demand generation dollars. And again, the different industries, different product lines, depending on channels of distribution, that mix will certainly vary. And again, that's why it's so important to establish the hard deck so you're not cutting things off. I've heard, horror stories where, companies been struggling a little bit in their operating margin and their profitability. And it's like, well, coming in, we're going to cut the budget. Cut marketing budget. So you've turned off the tap or faucet of the marketing funnel. And then to get that funnel rolling again, it's going to take a much longer ramp. We know there's so many touch points with an end user if they're a new prospect, and certainly making sure that you're on the radar with your own install base. All too often, many companies, sell, move on, and it's about a remarketing back to that customer base, making them feel that they bought the right offering or product, and then certainly being able to upsell, upgrade that. And that's not just a marketing job. It's also that of customer service, support, finance. Anyone who touches a customer, it affects the experience of the customer. And if you turn that off, literally, it stops, the communication stops, easy to turn off, but then the ramp together. And then you started to do damage. You're doing now damage control because customers haven't heard from you anymore. Mm-hmm. And then sales will start to complain because, oh, we don't have leads, or we're going into accounts where they've never even heard of us. And they're like, well, where's your investment in marketing? So then it creates, I guess, the market questioning the commitment of a company, or generates FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the competition. And if there's an aggressive competitor making more noise than you with prospects or in general, then people are going to think, well, this company's struggling. Should I hook my wagon to that company or not? So it again starts to create things. Again, this is what I think any head of marketing struggles with, going after the marketing dollars. And I think things get adjusted with, insourcing or building up organizations to do things internally versus using agencies. There is a balance there based on budget and based on how the market cost is. Because if you become too heavy in people, the amount of data spent on programs can get cut. And then if you cut the people, but you give the program dollars back, then you've got no people to actually go manage them or manage those tactics, those programs. And then it becomes a bit of a mess, really, in terms of marketing operations.
I see in your framework, 5A is, what is this $1 rule?
The $1 rule is, people would always like to say, the marketing dollars invested gives this much return at the end of the day, how much pipeline, and then ultimately how much revenue. So it's an equation, and it differs by industry.
It's return on every marketing dollar spent.
The old saying of, be careful what you ask for because you might just get it. I need more dollars, and most marketing people always going to ask for more money because they think they have more impact. It really is about efficiency. If you can show efficient spend, and efficient, and the one key word here to educate people on is investment. marketing should always be associated with spend. It's got to be about the investment for the company. Marketing had to be leading it. So, for example, like a company brand, or for example, raising the visibility for the investor community, so that you got that kind of, direct and indirect influence. If I want to say that, but again, if I'm investing in, say I'm a major software vendor, and my marketing tactics is really driving a lot of awareness, and I'm doing a lot of big trade shows, there's a lot of spend there, and there's not always the ROI. And then when you start to try and calculate the cost per lead or CPL, it can be huge. And then the CFO comes back and says, well, why are we doing this? Well, you need to look at that event as a long-term investment, because it's doing brand as well as doing some level of demand generation, lead generation. Certainly a lot of the event vehicles are things like VIP type events, more hand-to-hand or specialized summits, where the audience is very well qualified. They tend to be smaller. You can have a nice sit-down conversation, and you don't have the people walking by looking for some free tchotchkes, and then you wasted a whole cycle with inside sales, marketing operations, sales, all trying to nurture or contact that individual. Direct and indirect influence of what people are doing. So you have to be very careful of, if you're going to get some extra dollars, say you're working for a conglomerate where some money comes in from another area, you have to be careful in terms of what is the expectation, in terms of what they believe it's going to be used for. Secondly, when is someone to come back and say, well, got this extra dollars, but you need to justify the spend. As we know, if it's involved in demand generation, we're looking at 2 quarters out before you're going to impact a program to the pipeline or the actual revenue. So you have to be very careful there.
So this framework, marketing budget mastery, 5 days, what is the crux?
The best marketing budget is really not the biggest one. It's the one that nobody questions. And everyone sort of basically, you give them no reason to question it. If people are questioning your spend, they don't have visibility into the ROI, or they don't understand some of the things. And as long as they're people that matter, like the CFO and the CEO, and even providing transparency after the field, so they can see that, dollars in, the influence onto the pipeline, and ultimately to influence to the revenue. But the framework, I did one the other day online about the 5 C's of compelling message.
Yeah, I saw that.
I tried to work on this one, which is, it's really about alignment, with, you're building your inner circle, really architecting, building a budget that kind of is flexible, and that is actually, you could argue breathable. You have to be careful though in that space about shadow budgets as well, where people are spending things in another department, but it's sort of marketing related. So you get a lot of these like pop.
IT does that all the time.
Yeah, and then suddenly it's, we need to re-up some infrastructure for the website. Well, is that an IT budget or is there a marketing? So be wary of those. The third one really is about activate. Activating, the funnel, like a financial person would, or the CFO would. So tracking, lead acquisition, marketing qualified leads, whether it's a sales accepted lead / sales qualified lead, ultimately into the qualified opportunity, and then closing of the deal. But there are stages.
There's pretty much focus on go to market.
Very much, very much. I think one of the things as well that the people have to be aware of is in the activation process, there are always going to be hot spots in terms of engaging a customer, reviewing content. Did they like it? Did they not like it? Did it influence them? Did it inspire them? And ultimately, a human does get involved. If we're not talking, online purchasing of new iPads or something, there is a person involved. Now, an inside salesperson may have got up and had a bad day. And so when they're now trying to identify or have a conversation with their customer, they may have had a bad day. They may not be as articulate. They may be not asking the basic questions of, do you have banked or budget authority, need, and timing? And then the lead explodes. It doesn't go beyond that. And then the accountability is not on that individual conversation on that person, but on, oh, it was a bad lead. Even though the person had engaged with the vendor, the customer, us, in terms of reading materials, going to events, engaging on various different scoring levels of vehicles, but because it didn't end up and get through the pipeline of engagement with end user, with the sales team, it was a bad lead. Now, I'm not saying that is common. It is always the case, but in a lot of cases, I've seen that happen time and time again. So it's not a matter, and you want to prevent the finger pointing. If you can always understand there are always going to be hot spots from the marketing funnel through to the sales pipeline and the full loop that goes around, identifying the hot spots and looking for the ways to solve it, to keep it streamlined so they don't evolve again, versus trying to finger point. It's very easy to finger point, as we know in life today. It's his problem or her problem. The lead was bad or so forth. It was the product features aren't there. So again, there are all these areas of traditional cop-outs, but I think they shouldn't have to be cop-outs. Sales, marketing, finance, the collaborative team needs to come together and say, right, let's inspect this flow on an ongoing basis. It shouldn't be marketing operates here, we throw over leads to sales go do something with them. And if they don't do something with them quick enough, they go cold, and then you get this, bashing heads between sales and marketing. That's why I always look at go-to-market. Go-to-market is sales and marketing joined at the hip, where expectations are understood, and the strategy to achieve those objectives and metrics are well understood. And there is this kind of constant fluid process. It's getting better, but it really differs at every organization.
And there is articulate.
Yeah, so from an articulate perspective, so there was the arbitration in terms of what vehicles are working and what's the ROI.
So gone to align, architect, and activate.
Align, architect, activate is really about tracking it every stage, the conversion rates. It's not about the volume of leads that you're doing. It's not a matter of the amount of followers or engagements on social media. Those are all good metrics, but in some cases they're vanity metrics. Now we've got 20% more followers on LinkedIn. Great. How does it directly or indirectly contribute to revenue?
Yes.
That's the job of marketing, is to help sales win. When it comes out to articulate, making sure that let's call it the chain, eliminates doubt. People will say, why are we doing this? And this comes back down to the planning in Q1 in most cases. What is our plan for the year? What are our business objectives for the company? And then how are we going to achieve that from a marketing perspective? So what are the marketing objectives? What are the strategies that we're going to employ? What are the actions and timing? And those actions can be vehicles, and when we're going to actually kind of do those. And then, what are the metrics that we're going to go kind of look at those, and ultimately the business impact. Did it help keep a customer? Did it help gain a new customer? And then constantly revisit that. All too often I've seen plans written at the beginning of the year. Here's our strategy. And 1 quarter in, everyone's off doing something completely different. You could call it the squirrel moment. The competition are doing X, or new product, we did plan for it. But again, you've written a plan. You spend days, weeks, hours building up, let's call it marketing plan or the business plan for the company. And if you're not constantly going back and referencing it and saying, right, where are we against our plan? Which happens time and time and time again. You feel that you're doing piecemeal justification. We go back, like, we agreed this was going to be our objectives of the year. We agreed And we're transparent on how we're going to achieve that through these strategies and what is going to be required in budget, in people, in programs to achieve that. And what are the other departments and groups that need to do things different? For example, no point in building a great campaign on maybe a competitive takeout or a launch if the comp plans aren't in place by sales. Sales are not trained. Channel rollout's not there.
Yeah.
Content enablement's not there. So again, you can go launch a product, or product comes out day one, but what is all the pre-launch, launch, and post-launch activity that needs to happen, and the ramp time that needs to happen as well?
That's true. Like what I'm thinking right now when I was listening to you is also like whatever metric you're going to report, just always have an alignment and be ready to answer the question like, okay, show me how it influences the profit and loss statement.
Yeah, I usually say I'm trying to connect the dots because you could call it context. I think, when you're looking at softer metrics like social media, for example, they are, people realize today now, because 10 plus years ago, people are, we don't need to do social media. What's the point? That's for kids. You got some old school thinking that way. But you need to show what is the industry norm, what is the bar, the median, if you like, that we need to measure ourselves against. But then measure ourselves against sort of market standard metrics, but also what did we do last quarter? How is it compared to the same time last year? So that, again, we're not really, if you aim that we're higher than the market, great, pat on the back. But then how are we improving that going forward? And then again, what's the, we know an effect where things dip, but what was the cause? So all too often this analysis happens ad hoc or only happens on maybe a quarterly basis. And in some cases, you need that real-time information, real-time efforts are coming in. All too often, for example, on content creation, often we'll go companies create content without knowing how it's going to be promoted. And more importantly, is there budget to promote it? So in a lot of cases, this is one of the aspects that I heard from one of my colleagues as well, where the spend will jump on the creative, and then there was no budget signed for doing the demand and the programs. So the advice there is really to allocate the demand activities, the promotional activities that say for a particular asset, be it video, be it document, be it analyst paper, and then ensure and get going on with your creative. Otherwise, you're going to end up with an asset that looks great, but you got no eyeballs on it, and no one to use it.
As marketers, like we always looking outside and try to create funnel, like as much as pipeline that we can send to funnel. Just number is not enough. If there are 10% more leads to the funnel, has conversion been increased to sales?
In the product management land, you always have to tell people why. You speak to engineering. Why should I develop that feature?
Yeah.
Why?
Yes.
Sales. Sales will ask, why did this product win? Why is that capability or feature important? Why? And so people will have a natural tendency to ask why. So between product management and product marketing, they continue to have to be able to be the market expert as well as the customer expert. And this comes down to this same thing of when suddenly we get an inflow of positive conversions, ask why. Because the only time we generally ask why as humans is when something's gone bad. Why is our leads all stopped?
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
And unfortunately, you need to trace it back. Case in point, if we've turned off or moved the balance of the budget towards, say, more branding versus DG programs, demand generation, or we reduced the overall campaign flow, and maybe we went below the hard deck. 1 quarter later, 2 quarters later, 3 quarters later, what we did back here is negatively affecting today. And unfortunately, that's then spilt milk. People will then finger point. But I think the constant education back to engagement of the CFO, that they know if we're going to turn off these dollars or reduce this spend or stop this program or pull out of this event or not do this roadshow, that it is going to have, maybe you'll be able to come out with an analytics, a 20% decline in the fall, which is going to equate to a 15% decline in pipeline. Are you willing to reduce the revenue forecast? No. So don't cut it.
You have been leading different roles from mid to large organization all the way to global Fortune 500s, between CMOs and head of product marketing. What is that common pattern do you see towards the relationship between CMOs and CFOs, the improvement areas between them for relationship improvement?
I think where I've seen success is where you establish a personal relationship. I wouldn't say like you're going out drinking beer every night, but in terms of
Personal rapport.
yeah, personal rapport, making sure that the CMO, if I'm a CMO of a particular company, that CFO or financial team fully comprehend where the dollars are being spent. And is it an investment or is it a directly attributable ROI on the business, impact on the revenue pipeline? That's where I've seen it work very well. In large organizations, that's not always possible. So you have to build up your trusted team of endorsers of things, because the CMO or the head of marketing or the particular campaign leader that owns a big part of the budget can't be in all places at all times. So you need these people to help promote why we should be doing this. With transparency, one of the things I have noticed is it does improve a level of proactive engagement. It also fends off siloed creativity or siloed, spend. It stops, say, someone in the field in a particular region going off and creating a whole bunch of content and programs, or a competitive takeout in a silo that may have the wrong messaging from corporate or on the product, and could be duplicating spend. And so this is, again, an example of shadow marketing budgets. And organizationally, it's impactful as well. Sometimes in many organizations, you'll have everything sort of under sort of marketing, reporting up. Other cases, there will be field marketing, say in Americas, reporting up into a geo leader. Maybe it's the head of sales, or maybe it's higher. And they're running their local programs. And then where it comes back down to central marketing, both corporate marketing, product marketing, and sometimes includes product management, although that's tended to sit a lot more these days with engineering. You have to look about what's the value. How are you empowering regional spend, regional activities, which would be very tightly aligned with the sales leadership for their revenue goals, but doing it within guardrails. So there's sufficient spend in programs, but in some cases don't give too many dollars out for creative. We ran a thing years ago when I was at
You said don't spend too much on creative?
in a region, let them go spend on vehicles, programs, event, customer and user events in a central way. Yeah, and there is caveats to that. Certainly you want to enable some level of creativity, but if you can adopt what, back in my HP days, we had a thing called, DORA, again, another acronym that we can all remember, but it was design once, run anywhere. And the concept is that if there is, certainly collateral is always for products or solutions or vertical stuff is written centrally. They're not going to reduplicate it in different countries or rewrite it. There obviously will be translations, but the idea was like, seminar in a box, campaign in a box. So doing it once with collective input And that's probably the Achilles heel. If so-called corporate, say corporates in the US or the UK, two places I've lived, and it's not done collaboratively with the receiver, be it the regional, be it sales or regional marketing, then it's views over this hierarchy of we're controlling everything, you take what we give you. Whereas if you do it collaboratively, so there is creative input, again, they feel part of the machine. And it stops the organization from naturally creating silos or creating survival tactics because they don't trust. This whole operation of trust between regions, between sales and marketing, between sales, marketing, and finance. So remember, the CFO is having a conversation with the head of sales in each region. Generally, what's your revenue number? What's it going to take?
Yeah.
He's talking to
Are we
marketing.
going to complain about marketing a lot?
Always do.
Yeah.
But again, when you have a very synergistic relationship with marketing leaders and sales leaders, they will defend each other. Unfortunately, I've seen in some companies where, sales have beat up on marketing. Marketing has then got their budget cut. Well, who does that hurt? It hurts sales. So you really want sales advocacy, salespeople to advocate for, dollars in particular areas. Again, I've gone into companies where someone says, we need to do this trade show. It's always worked for me when I was in X company. And it might not be appropriate for the products, or it may not be the right priority based on the objectives and strategy that had been agreed to that year.
I'm looking at studies data that says marketing budgets have plateaued at 7.7% of total revenue for 2 consecutive years, 2024, 2025. This is recent. And expectations for growth are higher than ever. And you have analogy to doing more with less. But it's such a case when marketing budget is cutting off, given like this is plateaued, but it is not even sustained at 7.7%. Every organization is facing reduction in the budget year over year. And your analogy in theory for doing more with less, like how can it still make team keep going and stay motivated instead of burning out by doing more with lesser of the resources of a company?
My opinion in terms of what's going on right now, we're all influenced by AI. The other day, I was just putting a short paper together, and I had all the copy, and I started to format it, and it was a PowerPoint, and then I'm like, I know, I'll just throw this through Claude. Well, not only did it check some of my prose, my written work, but it formatted this beautiful document that if I had created it, could have taken me hours, or I'd gone off to send it to an agency or an internal creative group, take them hours or cost me money. So I think there's this huge opportunity, or it's happening now, where the productivity empowerment by AI is going to make a big difference to the budgets. If I'm doing a competitive analysis, I am no longer having to, I still need to understand it. It's not going to replace people's understanding of, say, a technology of its competitive paper. But you need to understand it. You need to try to read through and verify things. I need some of the traditional aspects of events and trade shows, which tend to be a large spend in some companies, versus the people spend. And it's always that level of balance. I think we're going to get more for less. We're going to get more out of our people.
That you have that in your architect A in the framework, employee versus program split.
You always have to be conscious of that. I do believe that content producers, people like in product marketing, will be able to get more efficient. But we have to resist as humans the laziness, or let's call it understanding of a particular topic by just throwing it through ChatGPT or Claude. Out pops a document, it looks pretty, but didn't proofread it and sent it off. I think there's also some challenges with people in the field just doing the same and believing, oh, it came out of AI, it must be true. I was looking at one company the other day, and I said, give me a SWOT analysis against this, and it did. And it talked about, well, you've really got to focus on the integration of this company that it just acquired, or it had acquired. So I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's a very good point. So I started researching, well, that company was acquired 3 years ago. So should no longer be a primary objective. So again, if I didn't check my facts, didn't do the full reading, didn't do my checks and balances against the narrative, I could look pretty silly walking into a meeting, saying, hey guys, we really need to focus on integrating in this company that we've acquired. And they were like, that was 3 years ago. So
It's true.
what's the old saying is, oh, it must be true. It was on the internet, So I think people, we're now getting into that with some of the AI. And this does come back to things we've discussed before about data quality, data silos, data cleansing, and data compliance. So beware what you ask for, again, because you might just get it. You're going to get these answers, but you must understand. So I think back to the question in terms of the spend and doing more with less, it differs. If you're working for, say a semiconductor company, your marketing spend on things like DG is going to be very minimal, or not as much as, say, if you're selling high-end enterprise storage or mid-market and mid-size enterprise storage solutions, where you need to do channel marketing, you need to do air cover, you need to do lead maturation, you need to show up at the right events and the trade shows, you need to be doing the not TikTok on the phone, but repetitive, visibility for end user engagements. So it's an opportunity to get more efficient. Obviously, this is a 7.7% a reality, but if you look at some of the enterprise B2B, the typical median price was about 8%. Spend was about 8% of revenue. Some competitors in enterprise B2B would spend up to 10, 12% of revenue. And in young companies, startups, it's typically in the 15% range. Again, depends on the company's maturity, the product maturity, and the ecosystem of competitors, the ecosystem of partners, channel partners, and the ecosystem of, let's call them ISVs, independent software vendors, that make other solution. All of these have to be touched. All of these need particular spend. But efficiency is good. This doesn't surprise me in terms of this percentage. Do more with less. Again, back to education.
Let's say there is a situation, so budget is cut 10% for the next fiscal. Okay. How would you approach without the sprint buck and approach?
I think it comes down to long-term versus revenue. What are the marketing dollars, or rather, what are the programs that we would have to continue with? What is that hard deck, the spec, Vanity hard deck, to keep the business running, to keep fueling the marketing funnel and keep fueling the sales pipeline?
Yeah.
That's priority one.
The minimum viable goals that we
Minimum viable budget, it's all about revenue. So you'll have the head of sales and the CFO saying 100%, I agree. We focus our dollars on keeping the revenue. And you need to be able to articulate and show, even graphically, how they all tie together. Because again, everyone thinks they're a marketing expert. Keep it simple. Show how it flows. Understand the hot spots. So that would be job one. Job two, in terms of what can we not afford to stop doing? Maybe you've invested $1 million in a continuous branding campaign to get visibility, which ultimately is top of funnel and touches the pipeline. We've invested this much. If we stop now, it was wasted money. Do you want to throw away that investment? And then I think it really comes down to sharpening the pencil. What are the big spends, and it could be an event. Say it's something like you've got something like the NVIDIA event, or you've got the Amazon event, or another event that's high price, but not directly attributed to the revenue pipeline. On the other hand, you have to take into account what is the negative effect from a perception perspective, a PR perspective, if we're not there. These are all about give and take. All too often I've seen programs or projects or campaigns or, marketing, MarTech, the marketing technology started, invested, times are tough, cut back on the budget. Now you're throwing that money away. And so be very wary of the waste.
Cost cutting is seriously a complicated situation lately, and not just lately. It always happened like 10 years ago, and today never seen budget increasing.
It's circular. I think prices go up, it's a constant thing. But back to what I said, a number of minutes back, that best marketing budget is one that you don't have to defend. And ideally you get other organizations who are the beneficiary of marketing to defend, protect, and endorse your budget. That's the way to win, in my humble opinion.
That's true. That's true. All right, let's deep dive into your $1 rule. Most marketers report on efforts, the initiatives, the activities. And CEO wants to see numbers as in like the revenue growth, profit and loss, the bottom line per se. What do you see when you are in the boardroom with CEO, CSO, CRO? What are they looking for really in those slides, top presentations on dashboards, metrics, and what are the right metrics? You also mentioned vanity metrics or pseudo metrics that we need to go away from with the marketing teams. Are those same metrics that like standard everyone can follow, or there are like some specific metrics that can be created for different teams just to show alignment for everyone? What is your take?
The natural tendency these days, given the amount of tools, AI especially, is we run the danger of analysis paralysis. Overly analyzing. But I believe it's good to have some vanity metrics. Oh, we've got now 20% more followers. That's nice. But if you can provide the context of joining the dots to helping the business, social media as an example, this is increasing our share of voice, increasing the awareness of who we are, why we do what we do, and it helps us engage our channel partners. It helps us ultimately influence and pull in new prospects. But I had a CEO a couple of companies back, and he said to me, he says, don't confuse activity with results.
Absolutely. This is big.
And one of the things you can look at as well is how do we measure these results in each department, in each vehicle, marketing vehicle that is, and making sure that you can join the dots. So it might be 3 marketing activities that all fuel to make an impact in the revenue. It's not always one just about your own.
Yeah.
So I believe in terms of making sure that you can always try and correlate that. Now that's why it's important for the relationships with the head of sales, because if you have a sales leader who's not a fan of marketing, or the individual running marketing per se, they'll be like, "How you didn't do that? My sales guy did that. He had a personal relationship." But again, it's that indirect influence of the customer and direct influence. A customer may not want to go talk to his favorite sales rep because he's not seen any activity from the company. So you've got to constantly influence that. But I think, when you're doing the quarterly or monthly dashboards on marketing, consistency is key. Understand what people in that room, who the audience is, what they value. Again, back to sales and finance, and in some cases the CEO, and in a lot of cases the board. What do they value in terms of trying to understand? Also, often I've seen marketing leaders stand up and give a lot of metrics, or also not a lot of metrics, but they give it a lot of activity. The lovely slide of, here's what we looked like at GTC Summit. Here's some smiley faces. Here's how many scams.
Emotional analysis.
That is sometimes a little bit more of emotional engagement.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, that's great. We're there, you know. But at the same time, what was the impact on the business?
Okay.
Or what do we expect from that event in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? Because I may not get a direct impact within a short period of window. I may get a long-term impact. Case in point, many vendors work with IDC, work with Gartner, work with GigaOM, work with a lot of different analysts, Forrester and so forth, chasing things like a Magic Quadrant or the Wave or new report. And you'll have an organization in both product management, product marketing, working very closely with the analyst, pitching roadmap, pitching game-changing platforms. It's all great. Lo and behold, we come out in the top right-hand corner of the Magic Quadrant. Beautiful. What are we going to do about it? It's going to cost me 50 grand for reprints. How am I going to promote it? Do I have dollars assigned? Can I inject it into an active campaign? Can I make sure that every sales rep has a copy and a short summary of why the customer should care? Yeah. What is the way that I'm going to use that asset to influence, to build credibility, and ultimately win the deal? It's good to pound the chest like we're number one in Magic Quadrant, or we're the top right. That's great. You say it once, it's done, one and done. You got to use it as a sales asset, a sales tool. And obviously, if you're not in a great position, you have to do a little bit of not damage control, but you need to do effective positioning of why we're in a particular position. We're in the visionary position because we're thinking beyond what people are fighting over here. These guys are good because they're executing, they're doing a lot of spend, but we've got the vision and we've got a strategy that our customers and the analysts believe in.
Yeah.
And so that positioning, but they're making sure that there are program dollars to promote it and get it in front of IDOs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like Field of Dreams. Build it and hope they will come. It's very, and then they're like, oh, we got all the assets, we've got too much content. Well, that content is bad. Again, I've been a young startup company where there's been one brief, one PowerPoint, and you're getting going. And you're working with one sales rep perhaps, and you're refining that message of what sticks with the end user customer. This slide was great, this one sucked, this was good. And you've got that constant thing. That's the beauty of a young company. Now, how do you scale that at a much larger, in an enterprise, getting that real world feedback? And that's one of my advice to product management, product marketing, and a lot of other functions of the company is get out into the field, work with the sales team, be doing that, not just to do the talks at the various events, but meet with end user customers, understand their pain points. Why? Because then that product marketing person can talk to all the marketing functions with real world examples of customers. When the product manager is trying to justify a particular capability or feature or experience, they can reference, I just spoke to AT&T, I just spoke to Bank of America, I just spoke to, Disney, I just spoke to all these different companies, and this is what they want. Engineering can't push back on that. What they can say there's not enough time or budget with our priorities, but it's like it comes back down to feature prioritization.
Yes.
If we do this capability, it's going to help us close a deal, or it's going to help us keep the customer or grow the customer.
And that's a wrap on this episode. As I look back over our journey so far, I'm struck by something far more significant than our metrics. I'm struck by the caliber of the conversations we have built together. To you, our viewers, thank you. Your time is the most valuable asset you own, and the fact that you choose to spend it here. I do not take it lightly, and I do everything possible in my control to create the value content for you. At this show, we are not interested in winning the race for volume. We are committed to quality over quantity. Our goal is not to fill your feed, but to fuel your perspective. We are building a platform focused on big picture insights that actually move the needle in your life and your career. We are still in our early chapters, and I'm grateful to have you with us as we build something designed to last. Thank you for your trust. and your continued support. If you value this perspective and our agenda, I invite you to subscribe and join us in building this mission. Thank you.